to CIDDL's AI office hours. We are so excited to have you join us today. My name is Angelica Fulcini-Scruggs. I'm the operations director here at CIDDL, and I am going to turn it right over to our speakers today, Olivia and Danielle, to get us started with our topic. So before I turn it over, just a quick reminder, we will do a short conversation of the topic. We will have some questions for after, and then we will stop the recording and continue conversations and questions if something comes up that you'd like to ask off camera. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
Hi, I'm Olivia Coleman. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Central Florida. And we're really excited to be talking about this topic today with AI and IEP development. And I'll let Danielle introduce and also share our slides that we're going to be using for this first 10-minute portion to kind of prime the pump for all the questions that you all are going to come with and suggestions. And we're going to hopefully learn from each other during this time.
I will introduce myself. I am Danielle Waterfield. I am a doctoral candidate at the University of Virginia, and I'm currently conducting my dissertation looking at generative AI platforms to be used for both instructional materials by special education teachers as well as IEP materials. Let me try and share these. So Olivia, just tell me when to click for you.
Go ahead. Let's just dive right in. Okay, so we're kind of want to talk about and get everyone thinking about and discussing like why this even matters. Obviously, we're hearing AI, AI, AI. How can we use it in education? And apparently, a lot of the CIDDL community was coming back with feedback that they would like an office hour on the intersection between AI and the development of IEPs. So we know that IEPs are the cornerstone of FAPE, or they're supposed to be. And they're federally mandated, but they're also time intensive, and then they can have really high stakes involved with them because they are that cornerstone. So we have been thinking for a while, how can AI help? And so some challenges that I'm sure you all know, being in the teacher ed world with IEP development, is there's constantly research is showing that there's a lack of training for our practitioners. There's a time burden as we go and resources get more and more scarce. The caseloads get larger and larger. And so teachers that used to have 20 on their caseload will now have 40, et cetera. And so having to do their daily teaching and instructional practices along with all of this paperwork can be really heavy and time consuming. And then there's also like inconsistent quality. In the few studies that have rated the quality of IEPs, especially IEP goals, alignment between present levels and IEP goals and such, the quality is really inconsistent at best, and poor would be the more generalized finding. As we know, we can say the IEP is the cornerstone of FAPE for our students that are being served special ed services, but how well is it really being implemented? But that starts with what the actual document looks like and entails and the quality of the document itself. So Danielle's going to go on and discuss using AI in IEP development. She will talk about a study that she led that I was on using ChatGPT to develop IEP goals, and it's really cool. So.
Thanks. So, like Olivia was saying, there's just some emerging research around using AI in IEP development. And there's been a couple of different areas that have been either like empirically looked at a little bit or kind of more anecdotally in media or in the lovely CIDDL resources that you might find on the CIDDL site. So a couple of different uses that have been documented are around documentation and writing present level. So using generative AI platforms to kind of convert maybe some of those notes that you might anecdotally take on a student into formal educational language and helping you draft those present levels. And then for goal development, like I said, we'll talk about in a study here in a second, but kind of generating and making those goals a little bit more high quality and just more individualized and standards aligned for students. Generative AI can also suggest accommodations that are research based, which this was actually the first use that I used ChatGPT for back in 2022, because that was my initial research area interest was implementation of instructional accommodations when I started my PhD program coming from the field, since I saw that was something as both a special education teacher and administrator that myself and my colleagues struggled with in the field. Generative AI can also be used to help you make sense of data. We know that you're always supposed to have so much data as a special education teacher and as an educator in general. There's the cat, pretty much right on time, and can help you kind of synthesize down that data into more coherent reports. And then also just kind of increasing your streams of efficiency as a special educator and handling more routine sections of those IEP and compliance processes so that you can really get more face time and individualized time with your students, because that's kind of, the modus operandi of using these tools, right? But there are other opportunities as well, like having less paperwork because those things are streamlined for you, which yields more time for teaching and relationship building. In the study that Olivia and I did, this was actually one of the things that a lot of the teachers had commented on that they were hopeful that generative AI would be able to do for them was give them that time back so that they could really spend more time with their students. Also trying to kind of speak to this issue of quality. Sometimes special education teachers might enter the profession without having any formal training in IEP development. This is something that I've seen both in the study that Olivia and I conducted and also talking to folks during my dissertation work, is that there's just really inconsistent levels of training that people enter the profession with around IEPs. And our kids deserve to have high quality IEPs. So using this tool to be able to have that is great. So we kind of have alluded a little bit to the research snapshot. So the study that Olivia and I did actually was following a study back in 2024 by Celia Recap, I think from UNC Chapel Hill. That sounds right. And the recap study looked at using ChatGPT back in 2022 with pre-service special education teachers to craft IEP goals. And from that study, they saw that it was very similar quality to what those pre-service special education teachers could write. And then our study that we conducted in the fall of 2023 with ChatGPT 3.5 at the time, we had special education teachers from around the country write IEP goals based on a fictionalized scenario that we gave to them. And then they repeated that process and used ChatGPT and did quality ratings for both of them. And it was basically the same. And we followed it up with some interviews, and they were like, this seems like a really cool tool, but I don't know how to use it. And I'm really hopeful that it'll save us some time. So even back then in 2023, they were starting to view AI as kind of this partner that could help facilitate things for them, but it's not a replacement and never will be to like that really crucial interaction between a special education teacher and their student to give that individualized touch. But there's so many platforms that are out there today. So where do you start with using generative AI to help you with IEPs? So there are some specific ones that have been adopted by school districts, like I know Magic School AI and Conmigo and EduAid. There's also Brisk, which I heard about recently, that has also been really big partners with several school districts around the country. But then there's also really specific generative AI platforms that are for IEP tasks, like Playground IEP or Expert IEP. And you can kind of just, test out these different ones and see which one seems to fit best with your needs as a special education teacher, or for pre-service teachers, kind of just letting them experiment and see which ones fit best. And if you're not sure where to start, there's also a website called There's an AI for that that can pull up even more platforms for you. But you might be like, that's great. There's all these platforms. How do I even start with that? So here's a quick example, right? On the left Stucky, we have this not very robust IEP goal of a student will improve their reading skills. Okay, how old is the student? What grade are they in? Where are they even starting from? Like we have nothing from this IEP goal. And unfortunately, as an administrator, I can attest I have seen IEP goals like this on IEPs. So that's a little scary. So you can use some prompts like the one that we did with ChatGPT of telling it to get it more into a SMART goal condition, since we know that that's an evidence-based practice in terms of having IEP goals and really making them observable and measurable. And so on the right is the output goal after putting in the initial lackluster goal and then having it be a little bit more built out. And so, really, it can just kind of help you in terms of refining your skills and streamlining things and filling in those gaps that you might not have had in preparation, but then also kind of supporting the development and training of pre-service teachers as well. And I'm going to turn it over back to Olivia for talking about some risks of using this.
Yeah, so um, Danielle and I just actually submitted a manuscript on the ethical use of AI in IEP development because we know that a lot of teachers out there are excited about AI just as we are, and they're trying to use it in the best ways they can to help with be efficient in everything that's required of them. But along with that comes a lot of risks and cautions with using AI to develop IEPs. So some of the big ones are like the loss of individuality. So if you are using ChatGPT in the same chat and you are putting in all the information for students to get different IEP components from it, a lot of times that it will use its database to just be more generic. It'll reproduce a lot of the same verbiage. Along with that comes biases based on how the LLMs and different generative AI have been trained. A lot of individuals with disabilities are not represented in the training data that trained these LLMs. So we really need to be careful of that when we're using it to produce these federally mandated documents. Along with that comes data privacy. How many teachers are putting in things that would go against FERPA for their students, right? To get the information back from AI. And then along with that comes hallucinations from AI, these fabrications that seem so legitimate and real, and it says it's research based, but are they really? And then also may come an over reliance on using AI to where the teacher takes too much of a step back or practitioner takes too much of a step back and doesn't check on what the outputs are. They just take it at face value and they rely on it all the time. And it's basically doing the job of the teacher. And then what Danielle already mentioned, there is a significant need for training around how to use AI to best produce those high quality IEPs that are going to be individualized to keep out that confidential information that shouldn't be going into the systems. Because even when something says the data is protected within it, it's been shown, for example, that ChatGPT can be leaked if you just give it the right prompts in the right way. And a lot of these AI platforms that are being like marketed to school districts and things like that, their underlying AI platform is ChatGPT, is what they're using. They're just helping to mold it to what we need exactly as special education teachers. So these are things that we need to consider when we are using AI to develop IEP. And I'm not going to go into the next couple of slides explicitly because we're running out of our little chat time, but we did create a framework to use. This is just a little graphic showing the framework that practitioners can use. Teacher educators can use this in their classrooms. Again, it is currently under review, but we will be sharing this with CIDDL as supplemental information that you can access. But it just goes through like these 6 steps to these 6 principles to consider when you're a practitioner using AI to develop IEPs, when you're a teacher educator teaching the future teachers how to best use AI to develop IEPs. It's not going away. You're not just going to be able to avoid this. They will be using it. So how can we help them use it in an ethical and productive way? So we talk about professional responsibility and judgment, that the practitioner is finalizing the content, the AI is not. And then prompt crafting, AI fluency, AI literacy, we've heard it all, but doing biases checks, going back and forth and really honing in on your prompts to get the best outputs. And then again, that individualization and equity, just checking for that this is really about your student, checking that it's not producing things for all of your students with the same verbiage, that it's really individualized still. And then also being transparent with families and other school stakeholders of the IEP team, in that disclosing that you are using IEP or AI, sorry, so many letters. And then that collaborative practice and reflection, sharing and refining drafts, et cetera, and then just continuously feedback, monitoring, and learning through your AI usage. The next one I really will just show, it's a decision tree that we've included that practitioners can use. And again, teacher educators can use this in their courses when they teach IEP development, that they can, it's literally like, does it say this? Yes, then do this. If no, then go back and do this for every step of IEP development. And again, we will be including this, and if you have questions on it, we can go back to it. But these are things we think are really important as we move forward with looking at using AI in IEP development. I think we're a little bit behind. I think practitioners are really getting into it right now, and we don't have enough research out there. And it's still in early stages, but it's being done, and I think it's being done a lot of times without disclosure. We see it in our own work-life balance, right? I use AI all the time as a thought partner in things like this. And I have a little bit more experience with how to use it ethically because of like the thought, like my thinking process in my academic position. When I was a practitioner, I don't know if I would use that same thinking process, right? If I hadn't had the training that I've currently had. So anyway, we just really believe that it's going to happen. It's happening. So that is all we have for our little spiel. And we had some questions on that last one, but we welcome anyone sharing how they're already using AI in IEP development, how you're teaching it in your courses, like what your thoughts on it are, and just any feedback and questions that we can all discuss together.
Danielle and Olivia, thank you so much for that presentation. I know that there were a couple questions that came in through the forms. So maybe we'll start there and see if someone else wants to pop in either in the chat or turn off your camera, jump on, turn on your mic and ask away. So the first one is, how best can you implement AI in an undergraduate IEP writing class? What would be your first step or suggestion for that?
Personally, and I'll let Danielle also answer this because she does great work in this area. Personally, I have started thinking of how to implement it by going and seeing how I can create assignments surrounding AI development. And one particularly that I found, I've taught an IEP and transition course a few semesters when I was up in Virginia. And I just found that the most seasoned veteran practitioners sometimes had the hardest time with writing those really quality IEPs, especially when it came to IEP goals. And a lot of times that comes from their being in the field for so long, they think this is how it's done, right? And so what I suggest, one assignment that I think is really crucial when you're getting started is to have AI generated components of the IEP, specifically like present levels and goals, and then also teacher generated that you can get. Obviously, they're de-identified and use a pseudonym. And you have them rate it using a basic rubric on rating quality of these things. And then you don't tell them which is AI, which is teacher. And after you reveal which one was the teacher created one and which ones were the AI created ones, you go through the ratings and how they differed, if they differed at all, why those certain components are important to note. But this helps to show them that it would help to show them there's not a lot of difference between the two, like we've been finding in research, that also there's, oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought with that one, but it just helps them to really, I think it's good for them to not only to generate content with it, but to analyze the content and be able to critique it. And so to set up different assignments that are using AI in different manners, not just generating AI, but also critiquing what's generated through it.
I agree with that, but I also think aside from just all of the content that you would have in terms of writing an IEP, part of the issue that I'm starting to kind of reveal is that there's also very poor implementation, even if you have this beautiful IEP. So I think leaning into like the progress monitoring side of having these beautiful goals that you've also generated, but then using ChatGPT to perhaps make some aligned materials that would help you actually implement those goals to track them and plan and everything. And I really love the comment in the chat from Allison that you used it already in your course for helping students make intentional plats with AI. I do think that it really is a game changer in general.
All right, great, thanks. And Beth, I see that you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for that. So I'm curious about what interaction or interface you're seeing between things like Frontline with IEP Direct, which in my neck of the woods, that's what people use to write IEPs. They're not even writing goals. They're just taking from a bank. And I'm wondering if you're starting to see any interaction between people using AI, because people, I don't know, again, in my neck of the woods, people just pick a goal from a bank and they're not even individualizing them. So I'm just curious if you're noticing anything in connection with that. Thank you.
I'll let Olivia answer after me, but I haven't heard anything official. We've just kind of heard rumblings that some of those bigger developers from like IEP software and websites are moving towards integrating AI, and Olivia might have more info on that. But that is something that came up in the study that we conducted back in 2023, was folks were saying they were comfortable with using goal banks. It's something that they had used for forever. So, kind of why do I need to use AI if I already have these? And then we kind of discussed that a little bit more about, well, you're missing like the individualization aspect of it if you're taking a goal from a goal bank. So I think there's work to be done too on the preparation side as well, of like really pushing towards encouraging folks to individualize. Olivia?
No, I agree. And like Allison said in the chat too, I also experienced that with the banks. Like you see a lot of homogeneity within the goals, and that's not what it should be. Literally, the I is individualized. And I have 1,100 students, IEPs, who take the alternate assessment, and within it, I don't know who the teachers are, but I can tell when the teacher is the same within my data, because they will all have the same science goal, or they will all have the same math goal, or something like that. And I do work with students, obviously, who take the alternate assessment, so it could look a little bit different when you're working with more mild or mod and looking at their IEPs. But I would venture to say that you're going to see that sameness because of things like the bank. And I don't blame practitioners for this, having been one. A goal bank saves you so much time. So I think when we look at AI and really promoting it within our courses, that saying like it also saves time, but can, when prompted correctly and interacted with, in a way that does so, then it produces more individualized goals and components of the IEP, while saving time through that efficiency. But again, it can become monotonous as well. And so we really need to train, I believe, the future educators and current educators on how to use it so they don't fall into that rut within AI, like many have fallen into within the goal banks, if that makes sense. But also in talking about like just tech, I have heard rumblings also that things like Microsoft and Adobe, like those companies are also going to get in the sphere of AI or IEP development through AI. And anything you put into Word, like if you use Microsoft Word, you've already given them permission to access everything you put on a Word document. And so they are using that without letting you know, to build out these tools and like an IEP platform.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much. We have a couple more minutes, but I'm gonna cut the recording so we can answer some questions offline for a couple minutes. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next CIDDL office hour.